For my birthday, my family kept saying, "Wait for it. A big surprise is coming." On the day, I came home to an empty house. Later, I saw photos of my wife and friends celebrating at a resort. My inbox was flooded with apologies 3 days later. "Hey Reddit, I'm Alden 40M, and this one still stings a little, but writing it out might help me make sense of things." It's not the kind of story where someone gets screamed at in a grocery store for asking someone not to block the aisle, though I've got a few of those too, but it is about entitlement, just not in the way you'd expect. Entitled people don't always yell. Sometimes they smile and act like they love you. Sometimes they're in your bed. Let's rewind a bit. I turned 40 a few weeks ago. I've never been the kind of guy who makes a big deal about birthdays. Growing up, we didn't do anything wild, just some cake, maybe a dinner out. My mom would always say, "You'll appreciate simplicity when you're older." I guess she meant well, but that mindset stuck. I don't really like being the center of attention, and honestly, I'm more of a background guy. Quiet job, quiet life. Married, no kids, just our dog Franklin and some close friends. My wife Marla, 38F, is the opposite of me in most ways. She's got that spark people gravitate toward, laughs with her whole chest, always planning little trips or brunches. She's warm and generous, but also intense. Like, she doesn't forget a birthday. If someone sneezes near her, she's showing up 2 days later with homemade soup and a handwritten card. For our 5th wedding anniversary, she surprised me with a weekend in a cabin where we went snowshoeing under the stars. So yeah, she's a planner. She makes people feel special. And she's got this huge group of friends she keeps in touch with constantly. Now here's where things start to shift. About 6 weeks before my birthday, I noticed Marla started acting a little cagey. Not suspicious, just off. She'd close her laptop quickly when I walked in, whisper into the phone and laugh in that "I'm keeping a secret" kind of way. The same kind of energy she had before that cabin trip, so I figured, cool, she's cooking something up. Then my sister Fallon, 36F, called. Fallon's, well, she's got a personality. Everything's a production with her. Growing up, she was the favorite, big energy, pretty, always had a boyfriend or drama to talk about. Meanwhile, I was the kid with his nose in a book, trying not to rock the boat. Fallon loves a spotlight. She also loves to remind me that Marla is too cool for me, which she's been doing ever since our wedding. Jokingly, of course. Always joking. She called me while I was on a walk with Franklin. "Hey birthday boy." She sang into the phone. "You excited?" "You better be. I can't say much, but you're gonna freak out. Big stuff coming. Just wait for it." I laughed and said, "Wait for what?" She giggled like a teenager. "You'll see. Just be ready. You're not gonna forget this one." Then she hung up. That kind of thing kept happening. My mom, who's usually very lukewarm about birthdays, suddenly sent me a text with about 10 heart emojis and a message that said, "Just wait. Everyone's working so hard. You're gonna feel so loved." I won't lie, my expectations started to rise. Not sky high, but it felt like something big was in motion. I tried not to get my hopes up, but people were being so deliberate about it that I started to think, maybe Marla had planned something truly special. Something with my family and friends all involved. Maybe even a trip? A party? About a week before my birthday, I asked her, should I take the day off work? She just smiled and said, "Definitely. You'll want the whole day." No wink. No follow-up. Just that. At work, my friend Ben, who's normally my lunch buddy, started disappearing during breaks. He got weirdly evasive too. When I asked if he was free on my birthday, he gave me this exaggerated shrug and said, "Wouldn't you like to know?" So yeah, by the time the day arrived, I was convinced something big was happening. I woke up around 8:30 a.m. on my birthday. Marla was already gone, which was a little odd since she usually stays in bed later than me on her days off. But there was a note on the counter. "Happy birthday, Alden. Can't wait for tonight. Just relax today. Be home by 5. Wait for it. Smiley face. Love, M." There was also a fresh bag of my favorite coffee grounds from that overpriced cafe downtown and a pastry box from the place across town, chocolate almond croissant, my favorite. I made my coffee, hung out with Franklin, watched a bit of TV, and then spent the next few hours wondering if I should be doing anything. I don't know how to explain it, but the day felt empty. like I was just killing time until something was supposed to begin. I kept checking the time, waiting for the door to open or someone to call and say, "Okay, we're on our way to get you." But no one did. At 5 sharp, I showered, shaved, threw on a clean shirt. I stood in the living room, looking around like maybe I missed a hidden camera or a balloon about to drop from the ceiling. Nothing. No call. No knock. I opened Instagram, and I saw it. I don't even know what I was expecting to see. I wasn't trying to stalk anyone. I guess I just wanted a distraction. Anything to take my mind off the weird hollow silence echoing through my house. The first story I saw was from Jenna, Marla's friend from her office, the one who always talks over people and insists on being the fun aunt, even though she's never had a niece or nephew. Her story loaded, and there it was, a resort. Not just any resort either. Windermere Ridge. It's this fancy retreat place about 2 hours from where we live. We talked about going there a couple of years ago, but it was always too expensive or not the right time. Marla said we'd go one day, when we had something to celebrate. And there, in Jenna's story, were the marble steps I'd seen online. The big fountains. Palm trees. That exact blue-green tile they brag about in their ads. For a moment, I just stared at the video, confused. Then I tapped to the next story. That one stopped me cold. It was Fallon. She was laughing into the camera, phone tilted upward. Behind her was Marla, my wife, smiling, sunglasses on, holding a smoothie and walking alongside Fallon like they were two carefree sisters on vacation. Fallon said, "We made it. No spoilers yet, but this weekend is all about you-know-who." She winked. The caption said, "Celebrating the most deserving person in the world." There were no tags, no names. Just inside jokes and little hearts and clapping emojis. But every next story I tapped through made it clearer. My wife was at a resort. My friends were with her. My sister and my mom were there. And I, on my 40th birthday, was not. I just sat there for a while, frozen, watching post after post. Fancy poolside lunches, a yoga session, a sunrise gratitude circle on the balcony. At one point, I even saw Ben from work in the background of a group photo. Ben. The guy who made up an excuse about visiting his cousin out of town this weekend. Marla hadn't said anything about a work trip. There was no emergency. No family tragedy. Just this. A carefully planned group getaway that I clearly wasn't part of. And the worst part? It wasn't just that they excluded me. It's that they performed like they hadn't. Every post carefully worded to seem vague, but celebratory. Every caption dripping with the kind of phrases people use when they want to hint at something special without admitting what it actually is. I didn't know what to think. My first thought was maybe this was for me. Some elaborate, delayed surprise. Like maybe they were coming back with some kind of gift or plan. But that didn't make sense either. Why would they post all over social media if they were trying to keep a surprise? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos. The next morning, my phone was still silent. Not a single call. Not a single message. I didn't go online again. I didn't even eat. I just walked Franklin around the block a few times and sat at my desk, staring out the window. It wasn't until 3 full days after my birthday that someone finally reached out. It was Fallon. She sent a voice note, of course. She never texts like a normal person. "Alden, oh my gosh, I just realized none of us messaged you on your actual birthday. We were so off-grid at the resort, you wouldn't believe it. But listen, you know we love you, right? This weekend was just about giving Marla a break. She needed it so badly. And we didn't want you to feel like you had to plan or worry about anything. So, happy birthday. We'll totally do something soon, just us." I played it back twice. Every word made it worse. They didn't forget. They had planned this carefully. They knew it was my birthday, and instead of including me, they decided to give Marla a vacation on my birthday. That afternoon, the messages started flooding in. A week, sorry dude, we thought you knew from Ben. Hope you weren't too bored this weekend from Nico. Even my mom chimed in with a message that said, you've always been low-key. We thought you'd appreciate some quiet time to reflect on turning 40. Quiet time? Reflect? I was stunned. Genuinely stunned. It wasn't just that they left me out. It was that they'd rewritten the narrative, like they'd done something for me. Like their betrayal was a gift. I didn't reply to any of them at first. I just watched the messages pile up. Some were clearly coordinated. People trying to make it sound like I'd misunderstood, like I dropped the ball somehow. We thought you were doing your own thing. Marla said you didn't want to party. We figured we'd do something for you later when you weren't so busy. None of them made sense. They contradicted each other. I could see them tripping over their own excuses. And Marla? She finally came home that night. Didn't even knock. Just walked in with her suitcase, a souvenir bag in hand, and a smile like nothing had happened. Hey you, she said. I brought you one of those wood-carved pin holders from the gift shop. Thought it'd be cute for your desk. She handed it to me like it was a winning lottery ticket. And I just stood there, staring at her. I didn't yell. I didn't say anything, not at first. I just looked at this person I thought I knew. This person I'd trusted for a decade. She blinked and tilted her head. What? She asked, like I was the one being difficult. Don't look at me like that. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a last-minute change or a fluke. It was a choice. They chose to leave me behind, to celebrate her on my birthday. And they had done it so confidently, so casually, that they hadn't even planned for what would happen when I found out. That's when something in me started to shift. Because if this was the game they wanted to play, if they thought I'd just let it go like I always had, then they'd pick the wrong year, the wrong day, and the wrong man. I didn't say anything that night. I watched Marla unpack her suitcase like she had just come home from a conference. She kicked off her sandals, took her makeup bag into the bathroom, and gave Franklin a few scratches behind the ears like everything was normal. Meanwhile, the pin holder sat on my desk. This cheap little trinket, probably picked up at the last minute from the gift shop, felt like an insult disguised as a peace offering. That's when I realized something else. She didn't forget my birthday. She hadn't been too busy. She and the rest of them truly believed I was so passive, so non-confrontational, that they could completely erase me from my own celebration, and I just accepted. They counted on me staying quiet. And to be honest, that's who I used to be. The guy who shrugged off jabs. The one who didn't argue when people overstepped. The one who got told, oh come on, don't be so sensitive, any time he stood up for himself. But that version of me was gone. I spent that entire night on the couch, staring at the ceiling while Marla slept upstairs. The dog curled at my feet. My mind turned, not with rage, but with clarity. The best kind of revenge, I decided, wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't involve yelling or social media takedowns or dramatic scenes. It would be cold, thought out, and permanent. First, I started with the house. The deed was in both our names, but the land? The land was mine. I'd inherited it from my grandfather 10 years ago, and I used the inheritance money to build a modest home on it. At the time, Marla had said, let's keep everything joint. What's yours is mine. And I'd agreed because I was in love and naive and believed that marriage meant sharing everything. But emotionally, I'd always been the one giving. She planned surprises for others, sure, but behind the scenes, I was the one who handled the boring stuff, taxes, mortgage, repairs, budgeting. She was the glitter. I was the glue. I started documenting everything. Dates, conversations, her trip, the social media posts, the messages people had sent me, screenshots, saved voicemails, receipts. I created a backup drive and stored it all in a folder labeled Winter Projects, just in case. Then I met with a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer, not yet. Just someone I trusted, who had handled a property issue for me a few years ago. We sat in his quiet office, papers spread across the desk, and I laid everything out. He nodded slowly. Legally, you're in a good position, he said. But if you're not ready to file for separation, there are still ways to protect yourself financially. Quietly. That's exactly what I wanted. Next, I restructured our finances. Over the next few weeks, I created a separate bank account under just my name. I had the right to. It was linked to a freelance consulting job I'd been doing on the side for about a year. Nothing major, just a few contracts here and there, but enough to warrant a separate account. I redirected my freelance payments. I updated my passwords. I logged out of every joint streaming service and removed my devices. I pulled back gradually, nothing obvious. Just enough to untangle myself from the web we'd built. Then came the real work. Fallon was the face of a small online boutique she launched last year. Loud, trendy stuff. What most people didn't know was that she wasn't the real business brain behind it. Her fiancé's cousin had handled the website, the SEO, the social marketing, all of it. I knew, because I helped her vet him. And more importantly, I knew something else. The web domain was set to expire in 90 days. It was still in her cousin's name, and based on a very casual coffee chat I had with him, he hadn't been paid in nearly 6 months. So I made an offer. Strictly business, strictly legal. I acquired the domain. Just like that. I didn't make any changes to the website. I didn't post anything petty. I simply forwarded all traffic to a quiet landing page that said, "This business is currently undergoing structural changes. Thank you for your patience." The next morning, I woke up to a panicked text from Fallon. "Fallon, did you see my site? Something's wrong. Can you help?" I left it on read. Then came the cherry on top. My birthday surprise, as they called it, had been funded in part by a group contribution. I found this out through Nico, who, in his attempt to make me feel better, had said, "Yeah, Marla told us to all chip in for the resort thing. She said you'd prefer a peaceful day alone, and we were doing this in your honor." Honestly, I thought it was weird. Turns out, Marla had collected about $2,000 in total from friends and family. They paid for her trip, thinking they were doing something nice for me. So I started making calls. I didn't come out swinging. I didn't accuse anyone. I just asked questions. Calmly. Casually. Like, "Hey, do you remember what Marla told you this trip was for?" Most of them went quiet. One of them, my cousin Dan, actually said, "Wait, she told me it was a joint celebration. Like, for you and her. She said you didn't like resorts, so she was going on your behalf." She lied to them. She manipulated them into paying for a getaway that excluded the person it was supposedly for. And now, they were starting to see it. I waited a week before I brought it up to her. We were in the kitchen. She was making toast. Casual morning. I said, "Did you tell people the resort trip was for me?" She blinked. "What?" I talked to Dan. And Nico. And Jenna. They said you framed it as a birthday trip. For me. She looked away. I mean, it was kind of about both of us. "No," I said quietly. "It was about you. You told people I didn't want to come, that I needed alone time. Then you took their money and went on a vacation without telling me the truth." Silence. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Really uncertain. I didn't push. I didn't yell. I just said, "You lied. And I don't think you even realize how bad that is." And then I walked away. I didn't say much after that kitchen conversation. Marla seemed confused. Suspicious. She kept asking if I was mad or if I needed time to process, like this was just a little hiccup in our marriage. Like she could smooth it over with another souvenir or half-hearted apology. But I wasn't mad. I was finished. She just didn't realize it yet. The final piece of the puzzle came into play about 2 weeks later. See, there was something I hadn't told her. Something she had forgotten, or maybe never fully understood. My freelance work, the consulting jobs. One of my clients wasn't just some startup or side gig. It was a firm, a good one. And they'd recently offered me a full-time position. Fully remote, higher pay, relocation options, and a signing bonus that hit my new personal account 2 days before I pulled the trigger. That morning, I woke up early, took Franklin for a walk, made coffee, and calmly packed a few things. I didn't take everything, just the essentials. Laptop, files, personal mementos, the framed photo of me and my grandfather that sat on my nightstand for years. Then I left my house key on the counter. Attached to it was a manila folder. Inside were copies of everything. The financial documents showing our accounts were now separate. a printout of my new job contract with my new city listed, photos from the resort trip, screenshots of the messages, a bank statement showing the transfers made to fund the birthday celebration from various friends and family. On top of the pile was a typed letter, calm, factual, and signed at the bottom. This was not an impulsive decision. It was the result of a pattern. You lied, manipulated, and excluded me on a day that was supposed to matter. Not just to me, but to us. And you expected me to swallow it. I won't. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I've made arrangements with a lawyer to begin separation. The house is still yours, for now. But the land is mine, and we'll deal with that legally. I've spoken to everyone who contributed to the trip. They all know the truth now. I refunded them out of my own pocket. Not for you. For me. Because I won't let your selfishness cost me my integrity. Enjoy the house. Enjoy the pen holder. I'm done. Alden I left without slamming the door. There was no dramatic confrontation. No shouting match or suitcase thrown down the stairs. I simply walked out of a place that no longer felt like home and into the start of something better. A few hours later, my phone started ringing. Marla. Then Fallon. Then Nico. Then Marla again. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched the notifications roll, and while I sat in the lobby of a quiet Airbnb a few towns away, waiting for the keys to my temporary rental, some messages were angry. Some were panicked. A couple were attempts to play victim. You're blowing this out of proportion. You're being cold. We didn't mean it like that. But I didn't respond. Because none of them had meant anything the way they said they did. That was the problem. They thought I was passive. That I wouldn't push back. That I'd let myself be erased quietly, the way they'd erased me from my own birthday. But they were wrong. And now, they could sit with the aftermath of their choices, while I built something new, somewhere far from their entitled orbit. I haven't spoken to Marla since I left. The legal side of things is moving forward quietly, the way I wanted. No courtroom drama. No ugly blow-ups, just clean, deliberate steps toward untangling a life that never felt fully mine. My lawyer is steady and no nonsense, the kind of guy who doesn't waste time on theatrics. I appreciated that. I'd had enough drama for one lifetime. Marla, though, she didn't take silence well. The first week, I got a dozen texts a day. Then came the emails. One was titled, "Remember Colorado?" Another, "Please, let's talk like adults." Some messages were dripping with nostalgia, like she was trying to remind me of the good times. Others leaned hard into guilt. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. This is so unlike you. You're just going to throw us away? A few had sharp edges. Thinly veiled threats. Mentions of the house. Joint assets. Emotional language designed to provoke a response. She even tried calling my parents, who had mostly stayed out of our business, to play the concerned wife card. I read every message once, then deleted them all. I wasn't interested in watching her rewrite the story into something it wasn't. She'd had more than enough chances to be honest, to be present, to choose me. Instead, she chose to leave me in the dark on a day that was supposed to mean something. Now she was watching her control unravel. That's what this was really about. Meanwhile, Franklin and I are settling into our new place. It's not flashy, just a one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with creaky floors and a tiny fenced yard. The kind of place where you can hear birds in the morning and traffic fades into the background like white noise. I furnished it with care. Nothing extravagant, just clean, intentional things that felt like me. A dark wooden desk, a bookshelf I finally had time to organize, a new bed with sheets I didn't have to compromise on. It's the first space I've ever had that's mine. Franklin seems to know we're starting over. He's calmer now, always within arm's reach, like he's watching me for signs of sadness. I talk to him more than I should probably admit, but he listens, and when I sit outside on the little back step with my coffee in the morning, he leans his head against my knee like he understands. Work steady. The remote consulting role gives me flexibility and a sense of control I never really had before. No one's breathing down my neck. No fake smiles. No surprise plans that leave me behind. Just real work, good people, and time to breathe. And that's the thing I didn't realize I was missing, space. Space to think. To exist without explaining myself. To build routines that belong to me, not to someone else's idea of what my life should be. I take walks now. I read more. I started picking up my old hobby again. Woodworking, something I hadn't touched in years. There's something comforting about working with your hands, shaping something real. No filters, no illusions, just effort, patience, and truth. For the first time in a very long time, I'm not just existing, I'm living. And in the quiet moments, those soft, calm ones just before sleep or just after waking, I sometimes think back on that birthday, that hollow day, the one they all pretended was about me but erased me from completely. I remember how small I felt, and then I look around at the life I've built since, and I feel powerful in a way they'll never understand.